What's good, YouTube? Sensational Sincere's here, and I'm back with another Tom Clancy's The Division Vendor Reset video. We're here for May 1st, 2020's Vendor Reset. So let's get right into this and see what we got good for this week. Okay, so for our first gear items, you want to head over to Camp Hudson. Here, the weapons vendor has a Super 90 with a gear score of 276. It has 309.50% stagger, and the talents this has is brutal, fierce, and self-preserved. For our next gear items, we're still at Camp Hudson, and the gear vendor here has the tactical mask with the talent enduring on there. It has a gear score of 269. The armor is 941. Its roll for stamina 1163, and the attributes this has is enemy armor damage and burn resistance. And then also here we got a prototype performance mod with 3.50% turret damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the base operations. Here, the Dark Zone gear vendor has a gunslinger vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 267. The armor is 1,836. Its roll for firearms 1,171. And the attributes this has is health on kill, skill haste, and ammo capacity. Also here we got a prototype stamina mod with 242 stamina and 3% skill haste. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations, and here the advanced weaponry vendor has a tactical AUG A3P with a gear score of 260. It has 19.50% crit hit chance, and the talents this has is sustain, vicious, and responsive. And also here we got a black market RPK 74E with a gear score of 278. It has 19% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is adept, talented, and deadly. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special equipment vendor, and here we got a Liberator with a gear score of 269. It has 20% enemy armor damage, and the talents this has is deadly, competent, and predatory. Also here we got a double barrel shotgun with a gear score of 282. It has 349.50% stagger, and the talents this has is ferocious, deadly, and vicious. Also here we got a military M60E4 with a gear score of 272. It has 19% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is dominant, competent, and adept. Also here we got a tactical vest with the talent Rapid on there. It has a gear score of 277. The armor is 1,999. Its roll for firearms 1,123. And the attributes this has is all resistance, enemy armor damage, and ammo capacity. Also here we got some operator gloves with the talent Savaged on there. They have a gear score of 266. The armor is 859. Its roll for electronics 1,215. And the attributes this has is crit hit chance, marksman rifle damage, and enemy armor damage. Also here we got a prototype firearms mod with 251 firearms and 3,247 skill power. Also here we got a pro red dot sight with 18% crit hit damage, 4.50% optimal range, and 5.50% headshot damage. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got an MG5 blueprint with a gear score of 256. Also here we got an EXPS3 holographic sight tan blueprint with a power level of 34. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the cavern. Here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 4.50% support station healing speed. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Camp Clinton. Here the special equipment vendor has a Cassidy with a gear score of 275. It has 308% stagger, and the talents this has is determined, vicious, and boomstick. Also here we got a Pecan. If you're a fan of this weapon, it has a gear score of 275. It has 21% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is deadly, brutal, and Pecan. Also here we got a black market SASG-12S with a gear score of 266. It has 316% stagger, and the talents this has is brutal, dominant, and vicious. Also here we got a gunslinger vest with the talent Vigorous on there. It has a gear score of 272. The armor is 1,866. Its roll for firearms 1,195. And the attributes this has is enemy armor damage, exotic damage resilience, and ammo capacity. Also here we got a Spec Ops pack with the talent Specialized on there. It has a gear score of 277. The armor is 1,297. Its roll for electronics 1,247. And the attributes this has is skill power and disrupt resistance. Also here we got some operator gloves with the talent Savaged on there. They have a gear score of 273. The armor is 976. Its roll for stamina 1,125. And the attributes this has is enemy armor damage, pistol damage, and LMG damage. For our next gear items, we're still at Camp Clinton. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got a firearms knee pad blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a stamina knee pads blueprint with a gear score of 256. Also here we got a small laser point blueprint with a power level 34. Also here we got a flash hider blueprint with a power level 34. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Dante's Run. Here the gear vendor has a tactical pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 270. The armor is 1,183. Its roll for electronics 1,258. And the attributes this has is stability and disrupt resistance. Also here we got a prototype performance mod with 4% sticky bomb damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Madison Stand. Here the gear vendor has an operator mask with the talent Tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 275. The armor is 941. Its roll for electronics 1,221. And the attributes this has is crit chance and blind death resistance. Also here we got a prototype stamina mod with 200 stamina and 3% damage to elites. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 7.50% Seeker Mine explosion radius. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the ward. Here the gear vendor has a tactical vest with the talent Vigorous on there. It has a gear score of 266. The armor is 1,824. Its roll for firearms 1,127. And the attributes this has is health, skill haste, and increased kill XP. Also here we got a prototype stamina mod with 264 stamina and 2,950 skill power. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Southpaw. Here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 6% first aid self-heal. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Firewall. Here the gear vendor has a tactical mask with the talent Refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 269. The armor is 923. Its roll for electronics 1,125. And the attributes this has is all resistance and damage to elites. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Crypt. Here the weapons vendor has a heavy magazine spring with 11.50% magazine size, 4.50% reload speed, and 10% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 31st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a Police T821. If you're a fan of this weapon, it has a gear score of 275. It has 21% crit hit chance. And the talents this has is Adept, Fierce, and Ferocious. And also here we got a heavy magazine spring with 3% crit hit chance, 4.50% reload speed, and 10.20% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you want to head to West 34th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a SRSA1 with a gear score of 266. It has 171% headshot damage, and the talents this has is Brutal, Vicious, and Dominant. Also here we got a prototype firearms mod with 262 firearms and 3% skill haste. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 39th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a M700 tactical with a gear score of 274. It has 171% headshot damage, and the talents this has is Balanced, Prepared, and Elevated. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 42nd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a lightweight M4 with a gear score of 261. It has 19% enemy armor damage, and the talents this has is Destructive, Adept, and Commanding. Also here we got a prototype stamina mod with 262 stamina and 3,196 health. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 46th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a Vector 45 ACP with a gear score of 279. It has 20% crit hit chance, and the talents this has is Responsive, Adept, and Hurry. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 53rd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has some tactical gloves with the talent Savaged on there. It has a gear score of 269. The armor is 912. Its roll for electronics 1,230. And the attributes this has is shotgun damage, pistol damage, and crit hit chance. Also here we got a prototype stamina mod with 254 stamina and 1% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 61st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has an extended magazine with 117% magazine size, 4.50% reload speed, and 3% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, you can head over to East 58th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a tactical mask with the talent Tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 278. The armor is 952. Its roll for firearms 1,223. And the attributes this has is all resistance and blind death resistance. Also here we got a gunslinger vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 278. The armor is 1,989. Its roll for firearms 1,217. And the attributes this has is health on kill, enemy armor damage, and increased kill XP. And also here we got an operator pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 276. The armor is 1,265. Its roll for firearms 1,245. And the attributes this has is crit damage and bleed resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Park Ave checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone weapons vendor has a tactical UMP 45. If you're a fan of this weapon, it has a gear score of 280. It has 20% crit hit chance. And the talents this has is Ferocious, Brutal, and Ambusher. Also here we got a tactical SASG 12K with a gear score of 268. It has 324.50% stagger. And the talents this has is Talented, Responsive, and Destructive. Also here we got an M700 tactical with a gear score of 266. It has 145% headshot damage. And the talents this has is Prepared, Skilled, and Elevated. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 53rd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has an operator vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 272. The armor is 1,865. Its roll for stamina 1,193. And the attributes this has is health on kill, enemy armor damage, and increased kill XP. Also here we got a Tyrant Suppressor with 7.50% crit hit chance, 4.50% optimal range, and 2% accuracy. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 46th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype performance mod with 3.50% ballistic shield damage. And then also here we got a Tyrant Suppressor with 7.50% crit hit chance, 5.50% headshot damage, and 4% crit hit damage. For our next gear items, you want to head to East 42nd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a loud vent break with 17% crit hit damage, 4.50% optimal range, and 3% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 40th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has some tactical gloves with the talent Savaged on there. They have a gear score of 266. The armor is 858. This roll for electronics 1,181. And the attributes this has is crit hit damage, pistol damage, and health on kill. Also here we got a prototype stamina mod with 259 stamina and 3,034 skill power. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 31st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a Spec Ops pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 273. The armor is 1,257. Its roll for electronics 1,194. And the attributes this has is skill power and ammo capacity. Also here we got a 5.52 hollow sight with 7.50% crit hit chance, 4% crit hit damage, and 2.50% stability. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the 5th Ave checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype firearms mod with 242 firearms and 1% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to DZ2 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a Spec Ops mask with the talent Tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 277. The armor is 916. Its roll for stamina 1,245. And the attributes this has is crit hit chance and blind death resistance. Also here we got a tactical vest with the talent Vigorous on there. It has a gear score of 272. The armor is 1,928. Its roll for stamina 1,121. And the attributes this has is all resistance, health on kill, and ammo capacity. Also here we got an operator pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 275. The armor is 1,321. Its roll for stamina 1,147. And the attributes this has is health and disrupt resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to DZ3 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone weapons vendor has a Police T821. If you're a fan of this weapon, this one has a gear score of 268. It has 22% crit hit chance. And the talents this has is Fierce, Competent, and Vicious. Also here we got a Marine Super 90 with a gear score of 270. It has 335% stagger. And the talents this has is Dominant, Ferocious, and Vicious. Also here we got a Covert SRS with a gear score of 283. It has 168% headshot damage. And the talents this has is Destructive, Proficient, and Vicious. For our next gear items, you can head over to DZ5. Here the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has a heavy magazine spring with 4.50% reload speed, 12% magazine size, and 10.50% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you can head over to DZ8 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a operator mask with the talent Refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 264. The armor is 854. Its roll for firearms 1,119. And the attributes this has is all resistance and increased kill XP. Also here we got a Spec Ops armor with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 270. The armor is 1,846. Its roll for electronics 1,170. And the attributes this has is skill haste, enemy armor damage, and increased kill XP. Also here we got some Spec Out gloves with the talent Savaged on there. They have a gear score of 265. The armor is 877. Its roll for electronics 1,171. And the attributes this has is shotgun damage, enemy armor damage, and crit hit chance. Alright everybody, that's it for our Tom Clancy's The Division Vendor Reset video for May 1st, 2020's Vendor Reset. I hope everybody who tuned into it found them something that they needed. Smash that like button if you hadn't. Smash out that sub button too if you hadn't. I appreciate that support. And I will holler at y'all with the next one, everybody. Take care. Peace.